Let's talk first about purchasing your prime rib. When you go to purchase a prime rib, not all rib roasts are prime ribs. Some are boneless, some are bone in. Do I find a difference with cooking bone in versus boneless? Well, most people say the bone gives the meat better flavor. Um, yeah, in some cases, like maybe a porterhouse or something where the bone's been cracked and the marrow's exposed, that would be true. In the case of a prime rib or a rib roast, the bones aren't cracked. So, since they're not cracked, all that marrow and everything soaking into the meat just never happens. So, the whole portion of a rib roast, bone in or boneless, is just preference. I find typically a bone in is harder to carve for individual servings, especially if you got kids or women or stuff like that that don't eat as much. The bone acts as a self rack, so you don't have to put a rack in anything. And when you're cooking it, it'll keep it off the coals or keep it off the bottom so the meat's not sitting there and it cooks all the way around. In the cases with bone on, it'll cook through that thin layer of bone and then start cooking the meat from top to bottom. In the case of boneless, you have to put it on a rack to keep it off the bottom so the juices can drip down and it'll cook all the way around. In all cases, you're going to cook this in a large roasting pan. You're going to want to start it with water in the bottom. That way, the hot juices, when they hit the pan, they don't burn and smoke. I'm going to do this on a smoker. I was flipping back and forth. It's really rainy and cold outside, but luckily a pellet smoker retains its temperature better. So we're going to put it on Z grills. I got competition mixed with some extra cherry. I'm going to bone this roast. I'm going to process it and take what I need, and I'll steak the rest. So we're probably going to cook about half of it. It's a 20-pound roast. It is prime. For some reason, we've had a little shortage in the U.S. of getting prime U.S. beef, but I thought I'd show you some stuff about prime rib. Since I was an inspector, if you have a problem with any piece of meat and you're buying it in a bag, there'll be a stamp on here. This being Canada, the stamp says 38. So this came from the number 38 processing facility in Canada. In our cases, for the US, the USDA has a stamp with an establishment number on it. The establishment number will tell you where that beef came from. So if there's a problem with it, you can actually backtrack it to find out what was going on with that particular piece of meat or lot of meat off that cow. If we're talking about weights, usually if we're cooking a bone-in prime rib, it's 2 people per rib or a pound per person on a boneless. So that'll make it easy. Smoker cooking time, 225, 20 minutes a pound. Bone in or boneless, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be probing on both sides. I typically probe the end and about 1/3 of the way down the roast because the middle will be dead rare and about halfway will be medium rare, and this will be well. But since I already know what the middle is going to be, I'm going to go off middle and on the end. So I want to know what my well temp is, and we're close to the middle. My medium rare temp is, because I know slightly more inside's going to be more rare on a full roast or on any roast. I usually use 2 probes. We're going to start processing this. I'm going to probably do this as a bonus roast, only because I'm going to save the prime back ribs to fix for Essie. She's a beef rib fan. And we'll talk about seasonings, and we'll go through a little bit on side dishes as well. This would be a really good choice for your New Year's if it's just going to be you or a couple couples or maybe even a whole party. How to do something very simple. Prime rib roast is, or rib roast, this one being prime. Usually you'll get choice, then there's select, then there's no roll. No roll is ungraded beef. It could be anything from select to prime. Um, Prime is the top 1% of all meat produced. Choice is about, they say top 2, but it's about top 2.5% of all meat produced. And then everything else goes under no roll or select. This roast right here is $16.99 a pound for a bone-in roast. It was $344.90. I got a good deal on it, luckily. So I can be able to do this. Since we only have 4 people eating this roast, this is a 20-pound prime rib. There's no way I'm going to cook a whole prime rib. So I'm going to bone it off. I'm going to clean up the ribs. I'm going to, after I take the ribs off, then I'll clean it up, and I'll show you how to do some interesting seasoning ideas with prime rib. There's a lot of things that you can't do when it's on the bone unless you're going to tie the bones back on, which you can do, and use the bones as a rack. That way, after the fact, you can just cut the strings, the bones fall off, you can put it on a board, let it rest, and you can slice it nicely. That's real easy, and we've done a lot of different things with string tying techniques. So, just open this up. I like, this thing had a really nice tread. Get rid of this. Sorry I haven't done a video in a while. We had the whole house had stomach flu. Now, take a boning knife, lay it against the bone, and cut it. I'm right-handed, so I work right. I could have been nice and left her more meat on the ribs. Pretty cold and rainy and drizzly, and it's a little warmer than it's been in Oregon. We had a shortage on prime ribs. It took me about 3 days to find one. If you're working the back, you can see the notches in the bone. Get a nice rack of ribs. Like we did with the pork ribs, there's a filament right here. I'll take that off. You can usually get it with your finger to get a lift on it. Doesn't mean you're going to get it all off. So, sometimes. And it's really hard to grip. If you're in the Oregon area and you'd like to get some meat, I'd recommend going to Crystal Creek in Sutherland. They got some great product. I get a lot of my lamb and my meat from them. You got all this fat that you don't need. Okay. And we're not going to use beef ribs, but I'll pack those for cooking for her. And I'll pack those away. You don't like ribs, use them for stew. These things braised are great. I'm going to smoke these later. The other thing nice about getting a prime rib or rib roast is you can do a lot with it. We'll get into here and playing with this afterwards. First, let's take the lifter off. Kind of a sinew right here. Kind of like a tendon sheath. And it goes right down to what we call the tail. My board wants to stay. Nobody wants to eat this. Let me get rid of that. Okay. You also want to look at this. This one, they peeled it. So you'll find some little areas. You can see it right here, right here, right here, right here. We want to get that off. Turn the roast over to get the rest of that. I mean, if you were in a independent meat market like Crystal Creek, you'll never see any of that on your roast. They will remove that. Now, we can see the eye or the tail. Big chunk of fat on this tail. I'm going to take that down, but I think my hand's pretty slippery. I'll use a 6-inch. I'll do a couple of cuts. Get rid of that. I like some of the tail fat, so okay. Now your roast is pretty clean. Let's talk about how much roast I'm going to use. Since I'm going to do a prime rib, I'm going to make some pinwheel steaks out of this lifter to eat later, since it is a prime one. And I'm going to roast the small end. Usually, when I buy prime ribs, I always buy the large end, this being a whole. I like the large end. There's more marble, more fat. It ends up to be much more flavorful. Some people are more different, that they like, they prefer T-bones over ribeyes. So in that case, you can either roast in New York, or if you're going to roast a ribeye, you can take this fat out, you can steak it, or you can take all this fat out in here and you can chunk it up into a bunch of little pieces, mix it with seasoning, stuff it all back in here, roll this back over, and tie the roast. And your roast will have seasoning inside and out. Just remember to go light on the salt more with the seasoning, and you'll end up really well. Now, another interesting thing is whatever you season the roast with on the outside, your drippings are going to fall down in the pan. In my case, I do a 4 peppercorn, garlic, onion type of seasoning. So I get a rainbow peppercorn au jus. And if you like peppercorns being very unique, each peppercorn has a unique flavor. You got green that's a little citrusy, black, which is black, white, very mild, got a complete different flavor. And then you have pink. Really hard to find pink peppercorns anymore. But you do the rainbow peppercorns and you add that to the roast. You spread it all over, and you'll have all these different little areas where the peppercorn is popping unique flavors into the roast. Now, if we were doing it in the middle and we were doing whole peppercorns, I would crack them. I'd beat them down with a mallet and get them all cracked and mix them in and put some in here. And then after your roast is done cooking, you're going to have all peppercorns and stuff that have fallen off the roast and are everywhere. In your au jus, which is basically the meat juices, you're going to combine into a stock pot, skim off the fat, and then use that for dipping. You're going to want to run them through a strainer so you get a clear juice. And here's kind of a cheat. You want to get the fat off the top layer. Works good for any type of gravy, chicken, turkey, whatever. Once you get it in the stock pot, bury it in ice cubes. And the ice cubes will freeze that top layer. Some will melt. You can cook that off. But it'll freeze that top layer. You can skim all that fat off and throw it away. And then cook down your au jus to the desired thickness you want or flavor. You can leave it thinner. If it's too salty, you can add more water. If it's not salty enough, you can condense it and make it a little more savory. So I have 4 people in this house, and they're roughly pretty good to eat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and probably a little bit left over. So about a half roast. I'm going to take 10-inch out. And they used to call them standing ribs because they'd stand them up. completely. I'm going to put it on the smoker after I get it seasoned and such. And on the rest of this, I'm going to make steaks. Let me wash up. My hands are a little slick. If I'd be working a shop, I'd probably be wearing cotton gloves. They give me a little more grip when your hands get a lot of fat on them. I like cotton gloves. So, we're going to talk about seasoning. We'll push this over here because I'm going to steak that. Strings on it, you can if you want. This being a whole piece of meat, I'm not really into it. Okay. I'm going to start with a little bit of garlic oil. I don't know. Scott's garlic oil. And the garlic oil is so I can spread the seasoning. And since I'm going to do a heat sear, and it's going to go on the smoker, probably a little bit more. That's going to seal the roast. And when the roast gets sealed, what'll happen if you've never looked at them watched them on a grill, when you get a hard sear on a roast, it'll actually blow up like a balloon because all those juices are trapped inside and they're all moving around, but they can't get out because you've already got a sear on it. I could do a cast iron sear on this, but I'm going to use oil sear and high temp. I'll run the grill at 500, do an oil sear, then turn it down to 225 and cook it 20 minutes a pound with probes. My seasoning, I'm going to do similar to my rainbow peppercorn, but since I don't have to do as much, we're going to go Scott's garlic oil, Scott's strictly pepper. Strictly pepper is a combination of rainbow peppercorns and of them all basically cracked down. We're going to do Santa Maria, my favorite. Probably for a roast this size, it'll be about a tablespoon and a half. My girlfriend's bringing out different styles of peppers. There's black. Here's smoked. Since it's going on the smoker, I don't need smoked. There's white. There's white pepper. I don't know if I'm in it or not.
Not that we like to advertise McCormick, but
since I don't have any chopped onion, just a little bit of onion powder. And I recommend, if you can, mix all this stuff up.
we got a lot of Oregon Spice Company. Hey, Oregon Spice Company, we're already doing Scott's, but there's a lot of stuff that Scott's. Scott's has a very small, select line of specialized flavors.
And what I like to do with this is season it actually pretty close to the night before if I can. In this case, I couldn't. If you're in Missouri, good place to go. Over by McPherson, you go to Kriebel's. They're not open today, but my buddy there I worked with, USDA, Jeff Hurd, is their lead meat cutter. They can help you guys out over there with whatever you need. I know they're not carrying Scott's yet, but now the roast is starting to loosen up. It's got seasoning on it. It's going to start to bleed. So, I got my roasting pan. and I got a rack in it, and don't have water in it yet, but we're gonna have that soon. Let me clean up my board. Do a lot of hand washing when you do roast. You'll probably wash your hands 10 times. So be sure you have a sink you can do that. Let's see if I can find my block scraper. Yeah, there it is. I use a block scraper for everything all the time. Take this out of the way for a second. Wish I had hot water on the ground, but you know. So I'm going to be working with this beef still. Seasoning's done. Well, since I'm working red meat on the block, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to clean up the seasoning. Leave the roast over here for now. Put the roast back over. And I need my baby block. Okay. So, we're doing side dishes for these. Can't go wrong other than the basic baked potato. I brought 6 because I'm going to eat 2. I love potatoes. Now, you don't have to do plain baked potato. Add cheese, add green onion, add whatever. Now, what I'm going to do is, these are big potatoes. They're going to take forever in the oven. So what I'm going to do is start them in the microwave, get them till they're fairly tender. Then I'm going to transfer them to a cookie sheet. I'll put them in the oven and let the skin get baked. Probably do these in 3s. Be sure you wash your potatoes. They tend to have quite a bit of dirt on them. Almost skewered my finger. And I do them in 5-minute runs. That way you spin one direction 5 minutes and then come back. Now, you can do a lot of different things with your side dishes. Since this is a more formal type dinner, I would probably do a diced green salad. You want to make it really interesting. Use little rice wine vinegar, little sesame, toasted sesame oil, some black sesame seeds, about 2 tablespoons of mayo, and about 2 tablespoons of mirin. And it makes an Asian sesame vinegar, which tastes fantastic. on salad. It's awesome on slaw. It's actually a slaw recipe for the tonkatsu that I made about a month or so ago, 2 months ago now. So taters are done. The other thing that's real easy, Brussels sprouts are really easy. We steam, but let's say we're going to do asparagus. So while that's going, I'm going to start that grill. So give me 1 second before we go to asparagus. Let me fire the grill. Let's eat your porcelain. Okay, the grill's getting started. Now there's tons of seasonings doing rib roast. Some people use mustard and horseradish. Some people use Lawry seasoned salt. That would be kind of a waste. Some people use pepper and garlic. Now, let me teach you something about asparagus. Something my grandma or my mom may have taught me. Asparagus, they're delicious, but they tend to get real stringy at the end. Now, a lot of people cut them off, but you don't know where to cut them. You cut it here, you cut it here. You want waste asparagus. So what you do, take your fingers near the end and bend it, and it'll snap. The stringy part will stay here, and the asparagus part, you'll see some of them will just bend, and you gotta move down. But they're super easy to cook. I've done bacon wrapped asparagus with a balsamic glaze. If you're going to do that, the asparagus cooks so quick on a grill, your bacon is going to cook a lot slower. So what you're going to want to do, if you wanted to do the balsamic glaze, which is just balsamic vinegar that's thickened on a stove, if you'd want to render your bacon first, get it to where it's at the point it's about to cook, and then you're going to take it and you're going to wrap about 3 spears at a time, and you're going to start those on the grill. And as they start getting, as soon as the bacon starts kicking off a little more fat, you'll want to just take a brush and brush the whole spear. But this is the neat thing about asparagus. Snap, snap, snap. These are actually trimmed pretty good. That one snapped a little longer than I expected. Sometimes they won't snap at all, and you'll have to move down. See how that one's bending? Move down. Rewashed. We We have a lot of asparagus eaters here, so I'm cooking 3 things of asparagus. That one broke down the lawn. Eh. That one doesn't want to bend, doesn't want to break. There it goes. I know this may be more time consuming than just grabbing a bundle and cutting the end off, but you're assuring that you're getting the most for your money. You're not wasting good asparagus because it's one of the more expensive vegetables. And what we're going to do on asparagus, we'll probably have you on here when I cook those. These potatoes, I'm going to do them with diced green onion. What I'm going to do is I'll probably take it out and show you one. I'll have that one while everything's cooking. And I like these rubber bands. I'm going to do the asparagus in just a little Santa Maria and butter. And that's a perfect size pan, as you can see. I'll take most of them out and do them in layers. And I'll roll one layer and I'll pull those. They're only going to take like 3 to 5 minutes. So it's one of the last things I'll do once the roast is cooked. Smoker's on smoke, so after I finish this, I'll switch it to temperature. Get the roast in there, get a probe in it. Turn it up as hot as I can get it. I've gotten the Z-Grills up to 460. When I use the oven, I use 500. 460 is pretty damn close. So, I forgot one straggler that tried to get away. Be like the turkey that hid during Thanksgiving. He didn't got now. So we got that. Let me clean up this mess. Potatoes are still going. Nice fat waste. Now, if you guys are birders, typically what they'll do with beef fat is they'll make suet balls. This is not quite suet. What you could do is grind this fat. It'd be a hell of a mess, but you could grind the fat, and when it goes through, you can take the fat, you can roll it in seed, and you can put that out for your birds. So we're done with this for now. Is the grill smoking, Bibs?
No.
Okay.
It's open.
Then go for bake. Let's give him another run.
Okay, the panel looks fine. It didn't tear.
Okay. It's what?
The panel is okay.
Okay. Those are so big. I usually do regular potatoes. 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. These are huge. Give them a little more time. to start with about a cup and a half of water. This is going to go on the grill. I'll show you what I got set up. It's a roasting pan. Roast is setting on it. That's so it keeps it off the water on the bottom. Smoke's going to be all enveloped in the grill, so it's going to be in there. It's also going to get the flavors of what's going on in the drippings, and I'll condense that, make a small au jus.
Now, what do you think about tenting? When do you tent something? When do you tent a turkey? When do you tent a roast? When do you?
I always tent a bird in the beginning if I'm doing birds.
Okay, why do you tinfoil tent something?
I tinfoil tent things typically with birds because the breast is so lean. The breast is leaner than the rest of the bird.
So it's not to protect the skin?
Not necessarily.
I just want to,
And then I typically, if I'm doing...
You got a viewer question from the couch. Sure.
If I'm doing turkeys or chickens or whatever, I usually peel the skin up off the breast and put butter and seasoning under the skin. And it works the same as this. It uses butter being an oil. It doesn't oil sear, but puts flavor into it. I'll usually tent the bird all the way till about 15 or 20 minutes till the end, and then I'll take the tent off so the skin will brown up real nice. Otherwise, it won't. It'll be white and kind of ugly.
So, is that something that's kind of exclusive to a roasting pan, or having water or moisture or liquid? Would you call it wet smoking or
not wet?
Well, there's dry smoke.
This is dry smoke. Well, there's no wet smoke. That would be braising. Putting the meat in a little bit of water and braising it. I wouldn't want to braise a prime rib. I braise a chuck roast. I braise a shoulder clod. I would dry roast a top round, a bottom round, an eye round, a filet mignon. Filet mignon, I would do room temperature filet mignon straight at 500 and 7 to 10 minutes a pound for rare to medium rare, and then take it out and let it rest. But it has to be room temperature when it goes in. This roast is room temp. I took it out about 2 hours before. So that's another key to your cooking. If the roast starts out at room temperature, it's at what? Most of our houses are about 70 degrees. So your roast is about 70 degrees instead of it being in the fridge when it's under 40 degrees. So that under 40 degrees to get it up to where it starts cooking, roughly 80, 85, 90 degrees, that takes a long time. So frozen or refrigerated before cooking, you're going to want to have it out quite a while. Meat, a couple hours. Turkeys, more than a couple hours. You want to pull them out of the fridge, maybe 3 hours. I usually season all my stuff the night before, so I'll pull it out, cover it, and let it sit, and get it ready to go in the oven. So that way it starts cooking when it enters the oven. It doesn't have to warm up to start cooking and throws off your cooking times. Because you can, with a big turkey, 20, 22, or 18, 20, it can throw you off by about 2 hours. And if you're planning to serve at 4, you might not be serving until 6 or 7. So these are things to think about in advance before you really start getting to it. We'll still get to this. I'm going to make steaks, not just typical ribeyes. There's a particular piece I like on this you can't buy. It's a pinwheel, so I'll bring out the string, and we'll take the lifter off this, and I'll make eye steaks out of the rest, and then I'll make pinwheel steaks for me. You can use skewers or string, whatever you prefer. I'm going to go put that roast on. Those are perfect. Wow, hot potato.
Hot potato. Doesn't this doesn't the meat take the seasoning better at room temperature? Like, if you season a frozen steak, it's not going to season, like, when things are cold, they contract, and when they're warmer, they expand.
Well, the thing is about seasoning meat out of the case or whatever, and seasoning in advance, is the salt's going to cause the meat to bleed, which is going to bring all the juices to the surface, which is really good because if you're going to do a sear, like on a steak, you're going to do a grill or a pan, you're just going to seal that. I'm going to do a sear, but I'm doing it with heat because I have oil in this. It's also going to do the same thing, not as effective as a cast iron pan or something, but this is a large piece of meat, rolling it around, doing a sear with a hot piece of meat and then throwing it back on here. Not really what I'm going to do. People used to do that a lot, sear a chuck roast for a stew and stuff. They'd use a cast iron pot before they added all the veg and stuff. They'd season the meat, they'd sear it in the pot they were cooking in, and then they'd lay it in there, then all the vegetables would go in around it, then the water would go in, then they'd put a lid on it and let it roll. So we're going to take this outside. I'm going to get it on the grill. You know, I'm going to come back and cut steaks. That's not where I want to do it. Okay. Put a probe in it. Go through its searing temperature. Now, Scott's Food Products, even though I don't have them on my page and everything, I do use them a lot. They're great seasoning. I've used them over 30 years. I've used all their seasonings for different things. So if you have questions, you feel free to ask me. I can tell you pretty much everything you need to know about the entire company. It's a friend of mine from when I used to cut meat. So let's get to this. Most people don't like ribeye because of fat. Oh, we can fix that. I love this fat. Now this is like suet. What I usually do if I'm doing a roast off this end, I chunk all this stuff. I cut it with a knife. And after I've cut it with a knife, I season it and put it back in. And this is a lifter piece of meat. What I'm going to do, roll that up like that, and I'm going to cut steaks out of that. And this, take some of this eye fat off. I'll leave that one there. Big piece of tail. If you don't like the way it looks, you're the one that's eating it, so you can do whatever you want to it. I'm just saying there's pieces I like and some I don't. So this is eye. What we're going to do with that, I'm going to take 10-inch. I'm going to cut steaks like I like to grill. I like them roughly 1.25 inches. And if you don't like the tail, take it off. A big long tail. That one's kind of a mixed bag. Feed it to my cat. My cat's a butcher's cat. So I'll put those away for later. Start another set of those. As we have 4 people in our household, that happens to be 8 steaks, 7 steaks. I'll pack them in 4s. I wish I owned stock in Ziploc, as many bags as I go through. Some people with food savers, they go through a lot of bags too. I was going to show you a quick way to do this. I'll probably do it when we do packing. How to get all the air out and make it like bacon. So that'll come soon. You use basically a sink full of water and you need a towel. And the second person is nice too, because it's kind of a lot of work. This will be the hungry bag. These are bigger steaks. I might just pack this one 3. Now, let's play with this piece. I don't even really want to trim this, so then I'll take that off. You could do this as a whole roast. You could lay it out, season the whole middle, roll it up, and smoke the whole thing. That would be actually really good. Or can you help me here? You make a string barrel. What you want to do is cut the handle here and cut this lower and lay your string in so you don't have this flap jumping around. I cut it a little too tight. So, we don't do like me in the past, no strings attached. Let's review the string. 2 fingers. These are your scissor fingers. Rock, scissors, paper. Okay. Lay them here and open them up. Take this string way over here Hang on to it. I'm going to turn it towards me, and I'm going to flip it. Do it again. Got the hands up, and pointing away. This thing's just hanging down. Turn your string to you, flip it, pull your string up, pull it between your fingers, pull it through the loop. And then do a lock knot. You want to cut these as wide as you think you're going to cut your steaks, otherwise you'll be cutting over strings. A lot of people used to, when they were doing their strings, they'd snap them. You'd end up blowing strings. You'd sit there and just cinch it down and snap it. And they'd leave it locked like that. But sometimes it comes unrolled. And that sucks. The other thing is, if you're doing it over bone and you snap your string, what will happen sometimes is the bone will cut your string and snap you back in the head. Your string gets loose, you can pull it, cinch it tight again, and just lock knot it. I also knew people that did double spins. The loop-de-loop. See, that's not going to work. If you make a mistake and you haven't locked it, your string will just come free. Let's say I did this and I already got the knot in. Magic. You're back with a straight piece of string. Roll those potatoes. I'm hoping I get 6 steaks out of this. I'm hoping. I didn't count, and it was just whatever came out in the mix. That's going to go with my extra meat. I'm going to go with my extra meat just to cook up. Six and 7. So, 2 bags for those. So if you figure just these alone are, if you go to Costco, sometimes they'll have them. I think they're $21.99 a pound. You paid roughly $5 a pound for a whole roast. So you paid $5 a pound for your ribs, which a little high for ribs, but that means you paid $5 a pound for this, which is usually $21.99. roughly today's prices. There's no way you can get a more tender piece of meat that's got amazing flavor. So on a whole roast, I'm going to end up serving, I don't know, 5 or 6 meals. If you can get the right price, like $5 a pound or something like that, then you're going to be amazingly happy. So for now, the roast is going to get cooked. I'm going to bag up this extra meat, put stuff away, and you can check back with me when the roast is done and I finish up the potatoes and the dish is done. Yes. So you guys have a happy holidays, and if you have any other interesting or you want to find out some stuff on different things to cook for New Year's or Super Bowl or something like that, I'm going to try a couple different things. But I'll be happy to answer your questions. Just leave me a comment, and we do get back to them right away. Even though I was gone and we had some family stuff going on, everybody was sick. I'm back now, and we're back to our regular schedule. Thank you. Like and subscribe.